Thank you for downloading this in-ear entertainment podcast. You're listening to Shakespeare's Sonnets. Sonnet number 9. Is it for fear to whet a widow's eye, that thou consumest thyself in single life? Ah, if thou, issueless, shalt hap to die, the world will wail thee, like a makeless wife. The world will be thy widow, and still weep that thou no form of thee hast left behind, when every private widow may well keep by children's eyes her husband's shape in mind. Look, what an unthrift in the world doth spend shifts but his place, for still the world enjoys it. But beauty's waste hath in the world end, and kept unused the user so destroys it. No love towards others in that bosom sits, that on himself such murderous shame commits. That was sonnet number 9 of Shakespeare's sonnets. I'm Mark Chatterley, and I'm joined by the wonderful and talented
Thierry Heles.
That works. I love the patter we've got going on. We are slowly working our way through all of Shakespeare's sonnets, 154 of them, and that was sonnet number 9. I'm going to let Thierry talk first.
You did a good job of reading through that. I was quite surprised because it's got some very, very nasty lines in it, pronunciation-wise.
It's the stust. All the ones that ends in stust are the hardest ones to say, I think.
They are quite weird.
We don't tend to have that form in modern English of the st on the end of things, and it makes things very hard. But yeah, I think that went quite well. I'm sure I will be atrocious on another one just to make up for it. So that's good. So what do you think about this one? We're still in the throes of the procreation sonnets at the moment. We
are indeed. I quite like this. It brings in the new image of having a widow, and not just in the sense of having an actual wife that he leaves behind. He also goes into the world that would mourn him if he died without having children. So the entire world would be a widow, a childless widow. Yeah, of him if he didn't beget children.
It seems to be the Shakespeare equivalent of going, you should have kids, no pressure, but no pressure. Everyone's going to be your widow, no pressure.
The world needs you, but yeah, it's all right. Take your time, man.
Yeah, this idea that finally it's sonnet. We saw it in the past couple of sonnets. Finally, the female viewpoint is coming into them more and more, and so in this one, the idea that someone will be left behind. So Shakespeare's conceded the fact that he's probably is going to get married, but not necessarily have children. So before we've had it's you should go and have kids, and marriage was just a byproduct of you have to be married to have kids, or back then it would have been the way it was done. But now it's you're probably going to get married, but you really need to have kids as well.
Yeah, he does insist on that point, and he goes into it and he says, what's the line? The world will weigh thee like a makeless wife. So just. It's not enough finding a female. You really, the important part is really to have the child.
Yes.
Marriage is just a way of getting there, I guess.
Getting to the children. And that's quite an interesting phrase, the makeless wife. As in, I guess that's a woman that has not made something, being a child.
That's how I read the line as well, yeah.
Which is a wonderful phrase. I keep spotting these lovely phrases, and I think there's one coming up in this. For people who don't know, we tend to record these in blocks of 4, so I've read ahead a bit, and there's one coming. There's a wonderful phrase. I'll point it out when we see it. But yeah, makeless wife. I quite like that. We should bring that back.
I do wonder about that expression though, because until now we've always had the wife or the female just being a vessel for the child,
yes,
rather than being genetic. Well, they didn't know about genetics, but being involved in the creation of the child. So using makeless wife, it implies that the female has some more active role to play rather than just awaiting his semen and letting the child pop out.
Yes, I was watching, there's a new series on the BBC. The BBC seems to be on a real education kick at the moment, which is good. And it's Dara O'Brien's School of Science, or something like that it's called, or Science Club.
Yeah, something like that.
And the first one they did was about procreation. and it was this idea that at this time and for thousands of generations, all we've really believed is that the woman is the soil. Essentially, it's that biblical idea of a man sows his seed and the woman is the nutrients for it. So yeah, in that sense, the woman is the incubator and the maker. The man provides all the material, and the woman just sort of develops it, I guess. That was a bit of a
which you can
sidebar.
see from, 15th, 16th, 17th century, their understanding of the world, that actually makes quite a lot of sense.
Yes,
It's weird from today, obviously, because we know about DNA and chromosomes and how that all works, but yeah.
It's easy to see looking back now. They were wrong. There are again in this. There are some nice. The idea of him leaving something behind. So when every private widow may well keep by children's eyes her husband's shape in mind, so that a mourning widow isn't alone if she has a child, because the child is essentially her husband reincarnate, so to speak.
Which is a very weird way of putting it. You still have your husband. He's a bit younger, but you still have him.
He's a bit younger. You can't do anything with him, but he's still there.
I can see I can see the thought behind it. Is the widow wouldn't be alone. There would, in every sense of there would still be part of the husband with her.
Yes.
Even if Shakespeare looked at it differently, then we would go, well, 50% of his DNA is the husband.
Yes.
Emotionally, and you're still attached to him. You still know that it's part of the man.
He's still around somehow, and that seems to be that's still a modern ideal. When you speak to people who want to have children, one of the highest reasons, or at least among my friends, is always I want part of me to live on, my genetic line. I want it to live on.
Well, that's sort of why we procreate. That's why we have the drive to have sex. You want your genes to stay in the world and your line to go on, basically.
to stay around and carry on. Let's see what else in this. This had another one of those. We had it earlier. We had an O in a couple of sonnets. I think it was sonnet 5 or 6, and now we've got an if thou issueless. I quite like those just because they're very dramatic. I can see Shakespearean actors really, really enjoying those. That was a complete sidebar.
The issueless in that line as well. It's quite a nice word for not having children.
Issueless.
Yes.
If thou issueless shalt hap to die, it's quite a nice phrase. And yeah, that leads in. So this sonnet very much starts as it starts. Is it for fear to wet a widow's eye? So are you scared that you're going to die? Is that why you're not doing anything? That this fear is paralyzing you,
and you don't want to leave anyone behind. Yeah.
And so having a child is seen as the solution to this problem of you don't need to fear death because you are living on, and that's really rammed home at the end with the rhyming couplet at the end with no love towards others in that bosom sits, take on himself such murderous shame commits. So almost, I don't know, maybe I'm fixating on the murderous too much, but it's almost as if by not having a child, there's this murderous shame. You are failing the world and failing yourself, and the murderous links to all sorts of ideas in my head of killing and not having the child is tantamount to killing the child, and that's quite an interesting parallel. I don't know if that's just me reading too much into it, but the idea that if you don't have kids, you're essentially murdering your potential kids.
Which is essentially, again, the metaphor for masturbation.
Yeah.
We're getting essentially back to the same image there. Kept unused, the user so destroys it. No love toward others in that bosom sits. And then the murderous shame... apparently the murderous shame commits was a Shakespeare... Well, expression from Shakespeare's time to do the deeds by himself.
So masturbation is a murderous shame. That's
well, you go blind if you do it too much, Mark.
Yes, that's why most men only go halfway and wear glasses.
That's quite creepy since we both are wearing glasses.
Oh yes. What was the phrase earlier on we had in one of the earliest sonnets was to have traffic with oneself? Was it something like that?
I can't remember the line now. We decided to remember it and use it, and then I just forgot.
It's gone.
Traffic.
It's something like to have traffic with oneself. But yes, and kept unused, the user so destroys it. No love towards others that in bosom sits, that on thyself, that on himself such murderous shame commits. It's such a strong way to end this sonnet. But beauty's a waste, half in the world end. This sonnet does come to me across as this very kind of final. It's end, it's death, it's widows. There's this overarching sense of inevitability that you will die, and the only way out of this, the only way you can't have immortality because that's not possible, but you can have a child, and that's the nearest you're going to get
to eternal life, yeah, or even prolonging your life, kind of. I guess if you're trying to convince someone to do something, you need to show them what the end would be like. In either sense of direction, you can't, because he's been trying so far. He's like, "Oh, you're so beautiful, and you really want children, and all that sort of stuff." And as long as he doesn't know where he's headed, if he doesn't have children, he's not really. There's nothing really to convince him. He's just like, "Well, I'm doing fine. I'm enjoying my life."
Yeah.
There's no problem with not having children. So really going to death and saying you are going to die and nothing of you will remain is...
What would have... this has just popped into my head, which is probably a bad way to go for this podcast, but what
We've been doing it so far.
What would the situation with contraception have been like back in Shakespearean England? Would they
use...
I don't know whether they would have been using pigs' intestine back then, because I know that was one form.
That, and then they used leather for a while. They just wrapped.
Wow, that's the sensation must have been
not
weird.
Really. Yeah, but considering some people today just you don't feel anything with condoms. Imagine having really thick leather and just.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I'm wondering if the reason is this young lover going around and having sex because he's obviously beautiful, so that seems to be a possibility, and he's having sex but is choosing not to have children by using contraception, or would that not have been the case? I don't know enough about contraceptive history. Why don't we learn these things at school to really know?
Well, I had just an article I googled now from the NIH, the American National Institute of Health, who says during the Elizabethan era there was a considerable body of knowledge concerning birth control techniques, including coitus interruptus, penis ointments, pessaries, purgatives, genital baths, and bloodletting.
They all seem not likely to help that much.
Works were available describing the symptoms and causes of abortion.
Wow. Okay.
Puritans were aware of birth control techniques, but were opposed to them for several reasons.
So basically, the only reliable way they had of it was
pulling out.
Yeah, which isn't that reliable.
No. Well, I guess there were a lot of isn't that how they got married? You slept with someone, you had an unwanted pregnancy, and then you got married. You either dropped the girl and ran away, or you got stuck with her for the rest of your life.
Oh, so this young lover's doing quite well then. I presume.
Yeah. Or he has children everywhere, but didn't tell Shakespeare about it.
Shakespeare is wandering around going, "No, you're not beautiful enough as a child. You're not beautiful enough as a child. This person needs to have beautiful children." But yes. That was a nice little detour to learn about contraceptive Elizabethan technology.
No intestines, surprisingly.
Yeah, I thought maybe that came slightly later then. Maybe.
I'm glad we're not doing that.
Or, like in wartime Britain, rubber and then washing it out and hanging it on the washing line. That must have been nice as well.
Yeah. Especially for the neighbours.
Oh, they're having sex.
Bad enough hearing them, but seeing it all.
Yeah, not so good. Right, I'm gonna let's leave that one there. I shall let you read us out on this one.
Oh God, I'm gonna stumble so much on this
But
one.
especially after you said that I did quite well.
Yeah, I'm gonna screw it all up now. Right, Sonnet 9. Is it for fear to wet a widow's eye that thou consumest thyself in single life? Ah, if thou useless shalt hap to die. Useless. That's a good one. Ah, if thou issueless shalt hap to die, the world will wail thee like a makeless wife. The world will be thy widow, and still weep that thou no form of thee hast left behind. When every private widow well may keep by children's eyes her husband's shape in mind. Look what an unthrift in the world doth spend, shifts but his place, for still the world enjoys it. But beauty's waste hath in the world an end, and kept unused the user so destroys it. No love towards others in that bosom sits, that on himself such murderous shame commits.
Excellent. That was Sonnet number 9 by the wonderful William Shakespeare. I've been Mark Chatterley.
I have been Thierry Heles.
And we will see you next time for Sonnet number 10. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Shakespeare Sonnets with Mark Chatterley and Thierry Heles. This has been an In-Ear Entertainment podcast. To listen to other podcasts or find out more about In-Ear Entertainment, go to www.inearentertainment.com.